This is Domain 9, Columbus and the Pilgrims, Lesson 5, Further Adventures of Christopher Columbus. To start us off, here are some vocabulary words. The first one is ashamed, and that's feeling bad or guilty for something you have done or because of how you have been treated. I felt ashamed after I was mean to my sister. Our next word is empire, and that's a large number of people and places ruled by one person or country. For example, the British Empire was once the largest in the world. Then we have governor, and that is someone who is chosen to make wise decisions in ruling over groups of people. For example, the governor of our state was on the news. Then our last word is historians. People who study and teach others about history, which deals with the people and events of the past. For example, many historians work at museums. To begin our read aloud today, the title again is Further Adventures of Christopher Columbus. I will begin now. When Christopher Columbus set sail from Europe for the second time, he commanded not 3, but 17 ships. He told himself, I will return to Hispaniola and find the men I left on that island waiting to help me. We will find the wealth of Asia and be rich. Everything seemed to be working perfectly. Remember, he still thinks that he landed in Asia, but we both know that he didn't. So now instead of just having 3 ships, he's taking 17. But the most important word in that statement is seemed. In fact, this time Columbus was sailing straight into trouble. Reaching Hispaniola, he found that the fort his men had assembled from the wooden planks of the Santa Maria was gone. There was no sign of the sailors he had left there either. Something was terribly wrong. What do you think is going to happen when he gets there this time? Columbus spoke with a few of the native island people whom he still insisted on calling Indians. Remember, these people from the tribe were not Indians from India. They were really Native Americans. He learned that while he was away from the Spanish crew had been unkind to the native people and had taken advantage of them. If you are taking advantage of people, that means that you're not treating them fairly, and it's for selfish reasons. So all of his men, the sailors, were not being nice to the Native Americans, or as Columbus called them, the Indians. Columbus had originally come in peace, but his greediness and the greediness of his sailors had changed things on the island. The men who had sailed with Columbus on his second voyage also treated the natives badly and were just as greedy for treasure. Once more, Columbus and his crew took advantage of the natives. They were forced to work for no pay, carving mines into high mountains. There is gold in those mountains. Columbus and his men told one another, and we did not sail all this way to leave it there. But they did not find as much gold as they had expected. When Columbus returned to Spain from his second voyage, the king and queen did not like the report he gave them. Isabella said, we will let you sail a third time for us, but you had better find spices and more gold this time. On his third voyage, Columbus thought, surely this time I will find a city rich with gold and spices like those I have heard about. But all he saw were jungles. During his search, Columbus became very sick, weak, and discouraged. He ordered his men to head for Hispaniola. When they got there, Columbus was surprised to find that a nobleman sent by Ferdinand and Isabella was waiting for him. The reason the king and queen had sent the nobleman is because they'd heard after the second voyage that Columbus was treating native people cruelly and was keeping the gold for himself. The nobleman had been ordered to spy on Columbus and arrest him if this turned out to be true. Indeed, the nobleman heard from many people on the island how Columbus and his men had mistreated the native people of Hispaniola. The nobleman announced, or read out loud, that Christopher Columbus, you are being charged with keeping all the gold and treasures for yourself, and therefore doing a terrible job as governor. Remember, the king and queen made Columbus governor, putting him in charge of the islands and people he found. The king and queen will decide your fate. Columbus is going to jail. They didn't have jails in Hispaniola, so Columbus had to be taken back to Spain. Columbus sailed the long journey home to Spain, not as a ship's commander, as he had once been, but as a prisoner heading to jail. He wondered how he would be greeted by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. What will the king and queen do? What do you think will happen to Christopher Columbus? At first, when Columbus arrived in Spain, he was thrown in jail. Later, when he appeared before the king and queen, they were shocked by the difference in the man they now saw before them. His hair had turned completely white, his body had grown bent and weak, and the man who had boldly stepped forward in the past now limped into their presence. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were ashamed. Ashamed means that they felt badly or guilty for what they had done to him by arresting him. They took pity on Columbus and ordered that he be released from jail. They set Columbus free and ordered his share of the wealth to be returned to him. Their Majesties shattered Columbus's dreams of returning to his former importance by announcing, "You are free, but you will no longer be the governor of our new empire." An empire is like a kingdom of all the places that Columbus explored. They were lands that King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella now ruled, just as they ruled Spain too. They put someone new in charge of Hispaniola and the lands beyond. The king and queen told Columbus, "We would give you one last chance to find the wealth of Asia. We will give you one last chance to find the wealth of Asia." They gave him a few old ships that hardly seemed strong enough to make it out of the harbor into the sea. So Columbus took those rotting ships, Spanish ships, safely across the Atlantic. How many voyages has Columbus been on now? This would be his fourth or fifth. Sailing up and down the lush green coast, he searched once more for the Asian cities he still believed must be there. Of course they were not, and not finding them, he did not go ashore to explore. Discouraged, Columbus returned to Spain once again without the gold and spices that he desired. Why couldn't Columbus find the Asian cities? Where was he really? Yeah, he was in between North and South America, so he was on the other side of the world. Christopher Columbus never set sail again. He died still believing that he had found the Indies, but other explorers disagreed. They realized that instead of Asia, Columbus had actually found a place that Europeans had never known about between Asia and Europe. Because they had never before known about this place, it was new to them. They called it the New World. Remember how he had two continents, North and South America, covered with blue paper on the globe? Once other explorers figured out that where they were, they called those lands the New World. Later, the name was changed to America. Today, every year on October 12th, Americans celebrate and remember Christopher Columbus's arrival to the Americas back in 1492. This day is called Columbus Day. Later, you will learn about a group of people called the Vikings who came to North America even before Christopher Columbus did. Historians, or people that study the past, from many countries have researched and retold the story of Christopher Columbus many times over. It means different things to different people, but one thing we know for sure is that Columbus's mistake changed the world. So now let's go on to our questions. What kinds of things did Columbus's men make the slaves do? They made the men dig mines in search of gold. Number 2. What happened to Columbus when he returned to Spain after his second voyage? The king and queen thought that he was keeping gold for himself and sent a nobleman to Hispaniola to spy on Columbus. Later, the king and queen had Columbus arrested and thrown in jail for not bringing enough gold for the mistreatment of the natives. Number 3. Did they ever free Columbus? Yeah. Why? They freed him because they felt ashamed of how they treated him and when he had helped them grow their empire. Spain now ruled over all the lands that Columbus and his men took over. What did Columbus think he'd found? The Indies. Number 5. What reasons does the author of the read aloud give to support the statement that the king and queen were upset with Columbus? So how did we know that the king and queen didn't like what Columbus was doing? He did not find gold and spices, or he was keeping the gold for himself and he was treating the natives badly. Number 7. Today we know a lot about Columbus because of historians or people who study the past. Our country remembers Columbus on Columbus Day, on October 12th. What happened on that particular day, October 12th, in 1492? Columbus sighted land on his first voyage and came upon the Americas, even though he didn't know that's what it was. He thought it was the Indies, but it was really the Americas. And this is the end of Read Aloud 5 for Further Adventures of Christopher Columbus from Domain 9, Columbus and the Pilgrims. Thank you for listening.